I would now like to introduce our next presenters to us. 15 years ago, Palliser Regional Schools was a division in crisis. The division closed 4 schools in 3 years between 2000 and 2002. Academic results weren't stellar. Following a routine annual presentation of provincial achievement test results, trustees stopped the meeting to ask 2 critical questions. Why were results not better? And what was going to be done about it? The questions led to a process of more questions and a solution that changed the trajectory of the division. At the heart of this evolution was a board decision to abandon a site-based management model that left all critical decisions to individual principals in favor of a centralized model that gave the board the resources it needed to act on priorities and create change. Palliser Board Chair Colleen Dietz has 17 years of experience as a public school board trustee and experienced the transformation from the beginning. Kevin Dietz, Dietz and Getz is pretty close, has served as superintendent of Palliser Regional Schools since 2007. And together they'll share the difference one board can make. So please join me in a warm welcome for Kevin and Colleen. Did you also have Robert? You'll introduce Robert? Thank you.
Thank you, Arlene. Just a little bit about myself. This is totally out of my comfort zone. I do not like public speaking. I do not like being in front of a group of any kind of group, but I'm here and I'll do this, and I'll do it for the students. I'll do it for the kids because it's worth it. One thing, my name's Colleen Dietz. As Arlene said, I was elected in '98. I'm the longest serving trustee on our board. Oh, is it not? There we go. I grew up in a rural community of Three Hills, moved to Calgary, went to school in Calgary, came to grade 12 education. I didn't conform well in a regular system. I did not like the desks, as Cole had indicated earlier. I was, as some have said, I was a challenged student. I ended up quitting high school in grade 12, and my board doesn't know all of this story because you always got to keep some stuff to yourself. I thought I could survive on my own. I was smart enough to do things, but then I realized you need an education to accomplish a lot in your life. And I decided on my own to go back through summer school, went to an alternative program, and finished within 6 months and achieved the education. So since then, I've then went into the insurance industry, got married, had kids, never dreamed I would become a school trustee because I did not agree with the school systems at times, but got involved and thought I'd do 2 terms, but then we started to make a difference for kids. Made it exciting, made it challenging, and I could see we were doing good things, so I continued on. Anyways, enough about myself. Our Vice Chair, Robert Strauss, has joined us up front. Robert was elected in 2002. He's been the Vice Chair since September of this year, and he is a welcome addition to our board. Kevin Getz, as Arlene had stated, has been the superintendent since 2007. The other trustees that we have, Debbie Laturnis is a trustee from the town of Coaldale. Esther Wilms, she's the trustee from the rural area of Coaldale. Craig Whitehead is the trustee from Pitcher Butte, Iron Springs area, and Don Zeck, who is our representative on the Public School Board Association, is away in Europe on a cruise right now, so he's the envy of us all. So I'm here today to tell you Palliser's story, and it is a story I'm very proud of. So between the years of 2000 and 2002, we closed 4 schools, and it was not a pleasant time. By 2007 and 2010, we reopened 3 of them. The schools we reopened are now operating as alternative programs for our low German-speaking Mennonite families. This was a response to the need of our rural communities, as we saw an influx of families in our rural areas. Many of these students were homeschooled or not schooled, and these programs provided a proper education in a school setting that was respectful of culture, language, and faith. These students are all English language learners, learning the regular Alberta program of studies in English, but with access to prayer and High German lessons. Here's just a snapshot of some of our results. As you can see, from 2001 to 2013 and 14, at the time of the presentation was made, the 14-15 results hadn't quite come out by that time. But you can see we have improved, and generally we improved across the board. It's just a few examples. So how else did we change? While improving our results, we also grew tremendously in the diversity of programs we offer. One of our newest programs is Palliser Beyond Borders, which combines our international student program and online school. This program brings the world to Palliser's door through international students and gives our schools access to a diversity of programming through synchronous and asynchronous online programs. This again is another example of our board's efforts to meet the needs of students and to provide opportunities and quality program regardless of where the students live. This summer, we had a student complete credit courses in Alberta from Asia. The number of faith-based schools, Christian and Islamic, and our Low German Mennonite programs all speak to our board's priority that the parent is the first educator, and parents should have choice within a public system. This chart shows how we have grown over the years, bringing literally thousands of students into a public system. The dip in 2014-15 enrollment was as a result of one of our faith-based programs in Calgary reverting back to the private school status. This again speaks to parent choice. Our partnerships with faith-based schools have to be good fit for both Palliser and the school itself, and we knew this going in. Now we will look at some of our accountability pillars, and I will let Kevin speak to these.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry about my voice. I'm trying to recover from a cold, so hopefully you can somewhat understand what I'm trying to relay. As you look at these categories, it's a chance to take a look at ourselves and our 3-year average, but we always compare ourselves to the province. When you look at our system, we've asked 2 things of our principals through our school goals process, and it's a focus on safe and caring, which can be very different depending on the community they come from and what that looks like, and how that incorporates citizenship, character education, and faith-based component, or all of the above, depending on how you mix that together, and improving student learning. And the improvement of student learning must focus on assessment for learning, and at the core of that is our literacy program that we have in place and the data we collect there. We truly believe if you improve literacy with all students, they will improve in all of the achievement levels across the spectrum of the curriculum. So when you take a look at this, our safe and caring and so on, but also the program of studies, quality education, dropout rate, all those kinds of things that I think truly does come back to when students are successful and they feel supported in a school, then they will demonstrate that through their achievement and through their willingness to attend school and then ultimately to achieve, because I think as it is with all adults, all the kids, they truly want to perform for you. They just want to be able to, in a circumstance where they feel like they can, and once they do that, then you can do amazing things with them. So we try to reduce all the barriers we can that way, and this gives you an idea of where we're at with some of those categories compared to ourselves, and then compared to the province as well. And this truly has been a journey over the 10 years, in particular, taking a look at this. So if I could, I'll turn it back over to Colleen.
Oh, there's about 4 slides.
Oh, is there about 4 slides for this?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. We, and I'm hoping we can get a plug in a little bit later. We received some news this morning about something that happened this week. So sorry, my mind's a little bit somewhere else at this point. We'll take a look here.
Oh, I'll do it.
It's obviously not my piece of technology. Then when you take a look at this, this is really some of the achievement pieces as well. And this is always an area for us to work on. One of the things we talked about with the board, we had, if you go back to if the people in the room remember the priority school discussion that came out of the government about 10 years ago, there were priority schools that were listed that were low achieving in the province, and they also had some priority schools that were extremely high achieving in the province. We did a lot of work working with the schools that were the low achieving, and we've had extreme success with those schools. as far as the clientele of the students that come to them, and we had to really develop that attitude that it doesn't matter where the kids come from. We can't control that. All we can control is what we have when they come in the door and the influence we can have on them. But we also worked with the board to take a look at things such as the number of exams that kids were writing, because we also know that you can control your own data by allowing only the best kids to write exams. And we did a lot of work making sure that our high schools are encouraging all students to participate in the courses they want to. And success means different things for different kids. So a child who is achieving a 50%, but that is the best they can do, that's success. And they need that opportunity to make sure that all their doors are open through their academics when they leave the high school system. And instead of, and I can remember the days of high school saying if you didn't achieve above a 65 or a 75, you can't continue on. And we've had to have quite a cultural change with that, and to allow our kids to demonstrate what they do know, not what's good for results.
So I skipped through them.
Okay.
So now you get me back. So what did we do? Over a decade ago, we were site-based completely. That created the have and have-not schools. Small schools especially would lose staffing and programs if there was even a small decline in student numbers year to year. Our principals managed their budgets, their staffing, and their programs based on student enrollments. They were business managers first, educational leaders second, if time allowed. Many of the conversations we had with our school councils and stuff were over money, they were over students, and it had nothing to do with education. It was killing our small rural schools. We had no central office budget to respond to priority needs, because every dollar we received, we sent down to the schools and we left the principals to make the decision. It was really actually quite easy for us as a board. The system worked okay for larger schools who could buffer themselves from small changes in student population. It was a vicious cycle to the small schools that just kept getting smaller. Here's what changed. We moved to a centralized system of pooled resources. We centralized human resources and managed staffing out of central office. We provided counseling services, for example, to all schools from a pooled budget to give all schools access to vital services. We centralized school budgeting that is focused on need, not strictly on student numbers. This stabilized staffing and provided an opportunity for flexibility. Best of all, we freed up our principals to be the educational leaders in their buildings. They focused on supporting teachers through instructional supervision. The principal is now focused on the quality of instruction and is the key factor in supporting teachers. We acknowledge the teacher is the game changer with the most impact on the students, and our system at every level is student focused. Here's a short version of a video from one of our principals back in the, I went through a lot. I am good. Here, our principal, Wayne Tate. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention there. He was a long-time principal with Palliser, and he lived through the change that we went, and we have a short little video on him. How do I get that to work? There we go.
Good day, my name is Wayne Tate. Good day, my name is Wayne Tate. I'm currently principal of Palliser's Hutterick Colony Schools, and I've been with Palliser Regional Schools since its inception. The viability of any school site then was determined by the revenues it could generate. And the basic per pupil grant and any other grants that might qualify for the school were allocated to that school and essentially determined staffing levels and program offerings. And those two things are the key to the viability of any school, really. Small schools then became challenged to offer any depth of programming, while larger schools could achieve a kind of economy of scale. Students also now have the opportunity to attend schools outside of their resident boundary. So there are a great many factors came into play around the same time. It almost became competitive to the point of arguing over where students really should attend. That began the the spiral of descent, I think. As we lost a few students, we also lost the accompanying revenues with them. And as we lost the accompanying revenues, we could no longer afford to offer the programming. As we could no longer afford to offer the programming, we would lose then a few more students. As we lost a few more students, we would have to look at staffing. As we reduced staffing, it impacted programming, and on it went. If you've ever been faced in a community with the prospect of losing a school, there are not too many things in a community that are more anxious. One of the most courageous things I think our Board of Trustees did at that time was to recognize the fact that there was something wrong, and that the pressure being brought to bear, not just to the schools, but the communities in which the schools existed, was growing, ever growing. They made the decision to examine site-based decision-making, site-based budgeting all over again. And they tweaked it, and probably the most important change that was made was to take the notion of staffing out. You know, I think maybe an unintended byproduct of the move towards a decision-making model, a site decision-making model that didn't have budget attached to it, was to free up people's imaginations, and there's maybe a greater degree of innovation within Palliser Regional Schools.
There. So here you can see Colehurst Elementary School. It was a priority school back in the day. The board freed up the money for a part-time phys ed teacher so that other teachers had one-on-one time with students who needed it. Within 3 years, the school won a Garfield Weston Award for improvement. The school has more than 40% of students coded with special needs, and in 2014-2015, the results found 85% of students achieved the acceptable standard of PATs and 24% achieved the standard of excellence. The other picture shows a band at the Champion School. This is another small rural school in my area where we were able to maintain the band program. We have been able to bring back band to all our high schools that are interested in the music program. We have music, art, and CTS teachers who share their expertise with multiple schools in a region. They travel around to the different schools. We have video conference instruction between schools for second language and high school programs. And the final photo is one of our 2 mobile CTS labs which travel rural Alberta or rural schools and into the Calgary schools, giving students access to CTS courses at schools that don't have fully equipped labs. Our literacy program and academic wraparound team would not exist had we not centralized services and made literacy a division priority. Palliser has a division-wide literacy program at every grade and every course. For students who are struggling, we have a team of experts in inclusive education, literacy, and technology integration who will work with the classroom teacher to suggest strategies intended for a single student. Those strategies inevitably prove positive for the others in the class. We also have a collaborative practice team that brings together our division's behavior support specialist, occupational therapists, speech language pathologists, and physical therapists or other experts as needed to work with the classroom teacher to meet student and classroom needs. We have videos on our websites, on our wraparound team, our student success story, and what literacy looks like in the classroom. If you're interested, you can visit our website, and it's on the services page under literacy. For our board, we see our role as setting a vision for a student-centered system that asks the key question: is this the right thing for kids? Our board supports choice. We build a culture of excellence and a system of accountability through our direction to our superintendent. We became a board with a vision for better services to our students. We started holding our central office team more accountable. We developed our own voice as trustees, and we changed our division. We also empowered our superintendent to make the change. It wasn't always popular. It was a challenge to the way we always had done things. Change isn't easy, but we had to change. What does the system of accountability look like? We worked with the ASBA to establish clear job descriptions, performance assessment guidelines, and an annual evaluation process that gives the individual an opportunity to produce evidence of achievement directly tied to performance expectations. This process is focused on achievement, not just activity. We ask the so what question. What impact did your work have? This gives individuals an opportunity to reflect on accomplishments and growth goals. This is a copy of our organizational chart, and I'll let Kevin talk to it a little bit on how we encompass the accountability culture throughout.
Thanks, Colleen. One of the things, I guess, in my career that I've had to wrestle with is the word accountability can come with different connotations. We very much address accountability as really meaning what's best for kids. And if you can put job descriptions in place for people, make it very clear, and then put the process in place of what the evaluation looks like, and then hold them accountable for what they're supposed to do, give them feedback on an annual basis, it's been very powerful. And you will find that if you were to, I believe, if you were to check with anybody in my system at this point who does an evaluation annually with myself or the direct supervisor below me, they would talk about the power of that because they own their own evaluation, and they're the ones collecting the data, and they simply demonstrate to us what they're doing, and then from that the conversation takes place. So credit to the board, because this is not something that was very positively met at times, but what they do is they do their own evaluation every spring, and it's usually about the first week of June. They start with my evaluation that morning, and then we continue with the board evaluation after that. Leading up to that, and what has evolved in the system, is a level of evaluations that, quite honestly, all feed into mine. And all the role and job descriptions must meet the needs of the goals as far as their goals, which match the province. And because of that, knowing that the entire team below me is putting together their responses to their evaluations to meet my goals, it is much more powerful than when I come to the board and share what the system is doing. Because the thing I've had to wrestle with and adjust to is they will hold me accountable for everything, and they will blame me, good or bad, for everything. And everybody in the system has really come together that way to know that everything that they are doing is supporting me in my role, because I'm the only employee for the board, and I have to take the blame for all their work or take the blame for all their successes. So that's been something we've had to do. So we've taken this evaluation process not only to myself, to all the associate superintendents and our secretary-treasurer. In the business side of things, we've taken that a deeper level into the accounting area, where they do the same evaluation. And on the educational side of things, we have put that in place with all the directors of learning. We have our supervisors of technology and transportation and facilities also doing the same thing. Our OH&S coordinator has the same evaluation process. All of our executive assistants in the office and communications also go through the same process. The process with our principals and vice principals is slightly different because, of course, we must honor the legislation associated with the ATA membership, but the actual process of collecting data and putting that together is extremely similar. And we've had a few people now move from principal positions into central office, and they have told me that the process for evaluation is incredibly similar that way. So it really sets them up for success that way too. And we do a series of evaluations starting, it's usually about April. The first round of evaluations, they feed into the next group of evaluations, which then I perform the evaluations with a facilitator of all the direct reports to myself. And then ultimately all that information is gathered to put together my evaluation, plus what I'm responsible for personally too, and present that to the board. It has become something that's very powerful for the people in the system. They get feedback every year. They're very clear. The job descriptions are all administrative procedures that are found online. We make adjustments, as you can tell by the numbers, as we grow and change and have done some things as a system. We've had to add people, change job descriptions, those kind of things, but we do that on an annual basis. That clarity has really allowed people to take a look at what they're going to do, and they know what they're responsible for. And it's not that every time we do an evaluation that they have an opportunity where they say, well, I didn't get this done. sometimes you don't get everything done. And it's an opportunity to talk about what the barriers were, or we always go through with each evaluation, and it has become a list of anomalies, because as you know, during the school year, things happen that you didn't see coming. So you're also allowed to talk about the anomalies that happened during that year that took up amount of time. And they'll talk about you can only spend time once, and you have to deal with what's important and urgent. Sometimes urgent isn't important, but it is urgent, and trying to deal on what is important. And sometimes other things have to sit and wait and delay. So it also allows you to talk about the difficulties you're having potentially in your role, but understand why. So that's really allowed us a lot of opportunity to deal with those kinds of things and put that together, and we are still working on how to improve that. I really need to put a plug in for Dr. Leroy Sloan. He's the one that really helped us put this in place. And if there's any interest, Leroy Sloan from the SBA is the one that, he's one of the facilitators we use. We also use Terry Gunderson. The process is extremely powerful, and that's what I keep hearing from the people. And as a result, I know we're having an impact on the kids that way. And ultimately, of course, have to give the board the full credit, because they're accountable every year to themselves. And those goals that come out, I guess the other piece I need to add is at the end of every evaluation, we talk, myself with the board with myself, and then all of the direct supervisors after that. There's a goal-setting process to this every time too. And at the start of every evaluation, you talk about your goals from the year before and how you did. So is there a tie-in from year to year as well? And it's been very powerful, but the board needs the credit to put this in place, because accountability can have the negative context to it. But what we've always looked at is if you look at student learning and how the kids are telling you they're doing, they're only telling you what they know and what they can demonstrate. The rest of it is upon us to improve, so we can help them tell us that they're doing something differently and hopefully improving what they're telling us. And this all flows together. Thanks.
So this is Palliser's effectiveness model. It incorporates the language of the ministerial order on student learning, the inspiring education, teaching quality standard, principal professional practice competencies, and effective schools research. The layers show the undeniable expectation for our students and for the adults in the system. Everything focuses towards the center, which is the student. If you are doing something that does not fall within those circles, then why are you doing it? So as a board, how did we make the major change away from site-based management? The timing was right because small schools were struggling. The parents and the staff were seeing the impact. Our board received an annual report from the administration on our diploma and PAT results. It was routine and it wasn't good. One trustee, and I remember the meeting precisely, asked the key question at that time: why are our results like this, and what are we going to do about it? And we weren't accepting excuses this time. Out of this discussion, we identified that resources were an issue. It wasn't that we were underfunded, it was how we were using those resources. As a board, we weren't giving our team the resources they needed to get their jobs done and to get results. We just moved the money to the schools and left them to struggle with it. A committee was struck of trustees, central office administration, parents, principals, and teachers who looked at the problem, identified the solution, and then helped share the solution with a larger group of stakeholders. That committee owned the work that they had done, and it was a great, productive effort as a whole, and it went by quite smoothly. The process was successful because the board and the committee took the bigger view rather than only seeing the system from their particular school perspective. One challenge in the years since this major decision has been continuing to build understanding of this change and what it means for school management on an ongoing basis. The parents who were part of the process a decade ago may no longer be in the system, and new parents don't know the history or why we are doing things the way we do. Many of our stakeholders today never lived in a site-based world. They don't remember when their schools didn't have band programs, for example, or counselors or other support services. They don't remember the last time we had to close a school, and they don't understand the many ways that centralization benefit their children, what they see in central office staff. They see a number of central office people, but they don't see all the work that these people do in every school across the division. That's an ongoing effort. We as a board have to continue to tell our story in our own communities. There. So, but this is an ongoing challenge, and is it worth it? Without a doubt, yes. This quote from a principal tells the story. We went from being a system of schools to a true school system. We saw this when we had the devastating fire in the Arrowwood Community School. Immediately, other principals were lining up resources to help. There was a time when one school would charge another school if they needed to borrow a book. In my own circumstances, my children used to travel down the road to the neighboring high school for option courses. They wanted $7,000 for 4 kids to come into that school, and that option class ceased to exist. It was not a good time. Today, we are more diverse than ever. We serve more students than ever, and whatever differences we have from school to school and community to community, we are stronger together. So just on a final note, it took courage for our board to speak up and question the status quo. But we did it, and we were able to turn our system around with the help of our central office team, our schools, and staff, and the result was great for kids. And we are making the public system the system of choice in our area. Questions? Questions?
Well, the questions, I think, were largely answered to the presentation. Okay, can you hear me now? Yeah, what a tremendous presentation. I don't know that any questions I would have had weren't answered. All I can say is I think exceptional people can generate exceptional results, and I know that you've got some very good people in your system, starting with your superintendent. I've known him from years before, and we were sad to lose him, but he's carrying on the good work, so congratulations too. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, yes. Mike?
I'm just wondering, when you first kind of centralized the money, so I imagine the small schools were thrilled about this, but were the big schools resentful? Was that hard to deal with at first?
Basically, what we did at the time is we got everyone together. We showed what was happening. The bigger schools, everyone has a heart, and we tugged at the heartstrings. They realized that communities were losing their children and communities were dying. And the bigger schools they finally looked at the whole picture, quit looking at their own schools, and they looked at the whole division as a whole and agreed that children should be educated in their own communities. So they were more than willing to help share the resources. And one comment, the presentation is as a result of our communications officer, Dawn Sugimoto, who does the notes for me, and it makes it very easy for me to communicate. She is worth her weight in gold, in my opinion.
It's also very humble. If you want to add that this was came up after surplus.
Yeah. When we did go to the centralized model, a lot of schools had surpluses in their budgets and stuff. There were some that had no money, but the principals that had the surpluses were willing at that time to give up half their surpluses to help us accommodate it. So we were very appreciative of them in doing that, and it helped benefit our whole system.
Terrific. Any other questions? Yes, go ahead.
On your survey results, and you sort of shift in population at the same time. So what percent of your population would it be residential students at the initial report results, and what percent of your population would be non-resident students at the end of your reporting results. So I see a growth,
So, yeah, you're thinking,
but I think it's in probably Calgary.
so we had asked that question of Alberta Ed back in the time, and they themselves wanted to check into that. So what they had done, and we didn't bring the slides with us, but they had withdrawn the Calgary schools out to prove it, and our children were succeeding very well. So it's across the board. And yes, we do still have some schools that are in needs, but we're there to help them, to support them, and to get those kids the services that they need. And we have very many schools doing very, very well.
So what percent is of the Calgary area now of the population?
Just over 50% now. But that's another whole story on how that all happened.
I'll call for questions. Well, I want to thank you, Colleen and Kevin and Robert, for joining us today and bringing your story. I was very impressed with it, and I'm sure that goes across the room. And we just want to make a little presentation to you on behalf of PSBA. And again, thank you for telling your story.
Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen.